Hey there, I'm IELTS Master Lee, and welcome to the Speaking Part 2 lesson. Today, we're going to go through a helpful person topic. Let's get started. In this lesson, you will, number 1, learn 2 different ways to practice IELTS speaking without a partner. Number 2, listen to a model answer of me for a Part 2 topic describing a helpful person. And number 3, examine the verb tenses being used in the model answer. We're looking at the verb tenses in this lesson because I use a story in my model answer, and the verb tenses I use are quite interesting and quite useful, and I use lots of different ones. So that should be exciting for this lesson and hopefully very useful for you. Okay? First, let's look at some practice methods. Practice method number 1 is record, transcribe, correct, repeat. So first, you'll record yourself talking about a topic, and you can use a cell phone or a computer or any kind of recording device. Then you'll listen to your recording and write down everything you say. This is called transcribing. Also, mark any words you think you might have mispronounced. Third, you'll check your transcription for any mistakes and correct your mistakes. And then finally, you can repeat this process from step 1 for a maximum of 3 recordings. So record yourself again, transcribe again, correct yourself again. It's always nice to repeat if you have the time. Speaking part 2 practice method number 2 is listen, memorize, record, correct, repeat. So number 1, you'll listen to my recording and notice that it's not perfect. This is my normal speech and I only took 1 minute to make notes to make it realistic. It's not useful for you if I just memorize a perfect written out speech because that's not what you do during speaking part 2. So there are a few slips, a few mistakes, a few ums every once in a while, but nothing big. Next, number 2, try to memorize my recording, including the ums, the pauses, the intonation, highs, lows, etc. All of that stuff. Try to memorize this and repeat it just like I'm doing. Even if you don't talk the same way as me, learning how other people speak, where they pause, where they use ums, and to be able to use this in a natural way is very helpful for you. So next, after you've memorized it, record yourself and compare the 2 recordings. You don't need to memorize the entire speaking part 2. You can just memorize 2 or 3 sentences. That's okay as well. After you record and you compare the recordings, try to correct any mistakes you make. And then finally, repeat the process from step 1 up to 3 times. Okay? Great. So please choose which practice method you'd like to use and make sure you take some time to do it. Today's question is, describe a person who has done a lot of work to help people. You should say who this person is, where this person lives or lived, what he or she has done to help people, and explain how you know about this person. You'll have to talk about the topic for 1 to 2 minutes, basically 2 minutes, and you can make some notes if you wish in the 1 minute you have to prepare. All right, if you want to do one of the practice methods, you can do it now. Next, I'm going to tell you my sample answer. And after that, we're going to look at some of the grammar. Okay, here we go. Okay, so I'd like to talk about a person that I know has done a lot of work to help people. And this is my grandmother on my father's side. She lived near my childhood home back in the United States, and I used to go to her house almost every other weekend because we had a big family, and so we'd have lots of events up at my grandparents' house. And you know what my grandmother did to help people? Well, I think there are lots of things, but one of the main things is that she used to volunteer at a hospital really often. You know, I was young, so I don't know exactly how often she would volunteer, but it was definitely a common thing. And I remember my parents talking about this when I was younger and stuff like that, but I really felt it when I was back visiting home one time, and I had to visit the hospital for something. And while I was waiting, a lady came out and talked to me, and she said that she had known my grandmother and worked with her when she was at the hospital, and that she was always so impressed and really admired my grandmother and her kindness and how much she gave to the people around her. So that was quite an interesting conversation for me, and I really felt like it was meaningful, and my grandmother had been doing meaningful things for the people around her. Other than at the hospital, of course, she took care of the people in my family, and we had a big family, so she would host birthday parties and make lots of different kinds of food and just always giving to other people. So I think she set a really good example in that sense, and I hope that I'll be able to be a giving and helpful person like she was in the future. So there's my sample answer. What did you guys think? Was it interesting for you? Next, I'd like to look at some of the grammar, in particular, some of the verb tenses that I used. We have past tense, present tense, and then we have some fancy things like continuous and used to and stuff like that. So in the purple, we have present tense, and there are different forms. This first one is I'd like, and so this is I would like, I want to, I would like to talk about a person. A very useful little phrase for you. Okay, then we have I know, is. This is my grandmother on my father's side. But then I'm starting my story in the next sentence. So I'm going back into the past, where she lived. And next is I used to. Used to is for things you did before many times, but you don't do now. Next, we had a big house, so we'd have. We'd here is not we had, but we would have. We would have. And we would have is kind of like we used to have. It's something you remember from the past that you did multiple times. Okay, and then last we have I think. I think. So this is back to me, not the story, but back to my idea. Okay, next we have used to again. And then in this next sentence, we're using both past and present. I was young, so I don't know exactly. I'm talking about know as in me right now. I don't know. But why don't I know? Because I was young when all of these things happened. I was young before, so I don't know now. Next is I remember, because I remember right now. This is present. But after that, we're back into my story. I really felt it. So felt is past tense, right? Past simple. And next one, now we're really getting to the action of my story. So here we have, and while I was waiting, what kind of tense is this? Do you know? This is present continuous. So this is the background information. While I was waiting, a lady came out. This is the action. So this is past simple, came out and talked to me. And she said that she had known. This is had known. This is past perfect. Why do we use had known? Because we're in the past and we want to jump back even further in the past. So right now we're in the hospital and I was waiting. While I was waiting, a lady came out and talked to me. She said that she had known my grandmother. So before I was in the hospital, maybe years before, she knew my grandmother. I want to make that clear to the listener, so I use had known. Okay? And also, next here we have worked with her. Is this past simple or is this past perfect, like had known? This is actually past perfect. It should be she had known my grandmother and she had worked with her. But because I have had known before, I don't need to say had. I don't need it twice. I can just say she had known my grandmother and worked with her. I don't need to say she had known my grandmother and had worked with her. It's not necessary. When she was at the hospital. Last couple ones. And she was always so impressed. She was always so impressed. and really admired. Really admired. 2 past simple. Then we have was. Oh, another one. Had been doing. This is past perfect continuous. Whoa, that's difficult. But again, we're going back in time. We're already in the past because it's my story at the hospital, but I want to go back in time to when my grandmother was helping people. And to do this, I want to use past perfect, had been doing, going back in time even further. And then what else do we have? She took care. We had a big family. She would host. Do you remember this? It's kind of like used to host. And then make. She would host and would make. These 2 are linked, so I don't need to say would twice. And then in the end, we have I think. Back again, this is me. Now we're in the present. I'm giving you my opinion or what I think. I think she set a really good example. Now set, the past tense of set is set. So this is actually past tense. And I hope. This is present as well. That I'll be able to. This is the only one where I use future. I will be able to be a giving and helpful person like she was in the future. How was that? Did you understand these different past, present, and future tenses for these verbs? It's quite interesting. This is a story, so there's a lot of past tense, but I use different kinds of past tense as well. I hope that in your IELTS speaking, you can use lots of past tense too for your stories. It's a very easy mistake for many English speakers, including native speakers, to not use past tense sometimes. So be careful that when you're telling a story about the past, make sure to use past tense. All right? Great. Thanks so much for listening to this video today. I really appreciate it. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/IELTS Master or IELTS-master.com. And finally, tell me, what would you like to see next? I'm looking forward to hearing from you in the comments. Thanks so much and have a fantastic day.